to Leader You by Black River Performance Management, where we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. In this leadership podcast, we will dive into the lived experiences of people flourishing in today's workplace and beyond. Join us to hear real-life examples of experiences from our own lives and from the leaders we know and trust. Thank you for joining us on the Leader You podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing a dear new friend to me, Dr. Joelle Calton. Joelle is a seeker of growth, joy, and connection who enjoys travel, self-exploration, food, wine, laughter, and deep conversation. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology in 2000 and since that time has built a thriving clinical practice. Along the way, she also became an equine-assisted psychotherapist, a psilocybin-assisted practitioner, a teacher, and a clinical consultant. Joelle has facilitated experiences for men, women, couples, and groups. She's excited about next steps in her career expansion. She currently lives in Northern California with her husband and stepson and also spends time in Baja and in Maine. Thank you for joining the Leader You podcast. This is part 2 where we have Dr. Joelle Calton back to talk about workplace well-being. I thought, what a perfect opportunity having a psychotherapist to talk about well-being, what that is, how people are struggling with the loneliness epidemic, and just where people are and where mental health is in general in this time, in this place, and why does this matter in the workplace?
Yeah, those are big questions.
Yeah,
Right?
and important things to talk about.
Really important. I mean, part of the reason that workplace wellness is so important is think about how much time we spend at work. And not only about 30% of our social needs are being met at work, but look at how much of our identity is wrapped up in work, how many hours we spend at work, how much feedback we're constantly getting when we're in the workplace, both positive and negative, and how much negotiation we have to do relationship wise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we walk into our office, we're not, I mean, if we did, we'd be totally overwhelmed. We're not thinking that all of this is happening,
Mm-hmm.
that I get to see my friend and we get to talk about the weekend. Oh, but I have to also see so-and-so, the IT guy who's always mean to me. And I have this project that I'm behind on, and I know my boss is going to be mad at me, but I did this thing really well. Like, we're not walking around thinking about all that, but it is on in the background all the time when we walk into work.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, that's been compounded, of course, by the fact that many of us are at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're dealing with all of the stress and all of the overwhelm, but we're not getting the lift of the social connection.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in the break room talking about someone's wedding or what happened on Game of Thrones or where are you going on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
or the fight with the boyfriend. Like, we're not just that kind of ancillary talking.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know until the pandemic how important that is to our social well-being.
Yeah, even bank
You know,
interactions and smiles, right?
right. Passing someone in the hallway, walking through a building where the guard is, we see that person every day
Mm-hmm.
and we say hi or good morning, or the parking attendant, or the person who's serving us our coffee at the bodega.
Mm-hmm.
We, that was just part of our normal life. And the cadence and the of our daily life and the structure and those little itty bitty interactions matter so much more than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
So now those are taken out of the equation and we're left to create them for ourselves, which for a lot of people, that's very, very difficult to
Mm-hmm.
do. But then we're still left with the stress and the feedback from coworkers or from bosses. We're still left with all that. But where's the nozzle? Where do we release some of that tension?
Mm-hmm.
And we're left to do it in our homes by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not healthy.
Right.
And it's not sustainable.
Yeah, and I think people are turning more to their social or to their phones because it's easy. We're trying to stay connected because we think, well, if I see what people are doing, I know I'm in the loop. But I think that's a tool that's literally bringing us more disconnected than actual. It's a tool, but it's not a tool. It's more of a communication tool versus a connection tool. You talked about digital intimacy in our last podcast, but I think this is a space where if you're using the tool for digital intimacy like this, then it is helpful. But if it's for use for, and you start to feel envy, comparison, left out, not enough, when those feelings start to come in, how does somebody know, like, how do they navigate that in your professional opinion?
Yeah. I mean, we feel it in our body. I mean, even people who aren't that connected with their body, we can feel when we're going through someone's post, or even when we're reading, when we get oversaturated on the news or
Mm-hmm.
oversaturated with what's happening in the world, we can feel the constriction in our body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we can just pay attention to that, if we can pay attention to, if I look at a picture on Instagram and I see someone that has the body that I want, and I feel myself go, oh, then I need to, that's a signal.
Yeah.
Like that is something I need to pay attention to,
Signpost.
right? And,
Yeah.
and similarly, if I look at a text from a friend of mine, that's to your point, using the phone as a tool for engagement. If I see a text from a friend of mine saying, I'm going to be a grandma, just like that makes us happy and smile.
Mm-hmm.
Same, we have to be as aware as when we go, oh, I'll never look like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, wow, I should work out. That person's working out. I should be working out. The minute we feel that kind of stuff is a minute that we have to say, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing?
Yep. Become
And it's almost
conscious.
like be conscious of it and
Yeah.
then make a decision.
Yeah.
And we almost have to override that. I mean, I don't, it sounds simplistic, but if we are down a doom, I call it a doom loop,
Mm-hmm.
when it's just like I'm looping and everything bad is happening in the world, everybody's has a rocking body, someone's in the Maldives. I'm just like, it's just, I'm doom looping, right? Like it's just because my life is all doom and gloom compared to all this,
Right.
or the world is doom and gloom and I feel out of control. Whatever it is, I call it a doom loop. And then I almost have to, it's not enough to stop. I almost have to like do something kind or do
Mm-hmm.
something positive because it's still, the doom loop is still going on in my head,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's so addictive that even for someone like me who knows better,
Right.
like to put down the phone in between clients instead of looking at social, to go outside and sit in the sun for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Something just like that, that is so regulating instead of dysregulating. And for us to know, identify what things in our life are regulating and dysregulating, just in general, that's a good tool for us to have. And when we're dysregulated is when we feel it in our body.
Mm-hmm.
We feel constricted, we feel like we can't breathe, we feel sad, we feel jealous, we
Mm-hmm.
feel envy, we feel rage.
Mm-hmm.
Rage isn't always bad, but just to be mindful that
Mm-hmm.
we're having these visceral reactions to things.
Yeah, and those you said, those are signposts,
Yeah.
and those in triggers. When we talk about triggers, those can let you know where you might need healing, where there's something that it's like there's some fears there, or there's something that's raw that might need deeper looking into, more of a root cause, and you're seeing some symptoms there.
Yeah. And just what are our sensitivities? What are our sensitivities? Just like we might have sensitivities to certain foods, we might have sensitivities to certain temperatures, we have sensitivities to energy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And can we give that as much space as we give the sensitivities we have to other things?
Mm-hmm.
People who have really can tell me explicitly what happens in their body when they eat certain foods. People can tell me, I can't stand the cold. I don't like the snow. It makes me, I can't, it makes me uncomfortable. People who are really sensitive to fabrics or
Mm-hmm.
sensitive to people's voices or sensitive to when people chew too loud or talk with their mouth full. Like we have all these
Mm-hmm.
sensitivities, but when it comes to our internal reaction to energy, we are a little less sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so how do we get really sensitive to, wow, every time I see a picture of someone working out, it makes me feel bad about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like what is that about? And
Right.
what has to happen for A, for that not to happen, or B, for me to have a different reaction around it.
Right. Is that how I want to feel? Even
How I want
stopping
to,
to just say, is this how I want to feel? What are the other options?
yeah,
What could I do in this instance? I could stop following this and find other things, or I could decide to take a social media sabbatical, right?
yeah, yeah,
Or you could decide to follow more things that actually that make you feel the other way. Like, oh gosh, when I watch this person, I feel inspired, I feel motivated. They still have a rockin' body, but for some reason when I get in their presence, my energy uplifts, right?
Yeah. That's a really good point, Angie, because there's sometimes perhaps maybe I'll look at someone's post and I'm actually really happy for, like, when I see them where I'm like I'm rooting for them.
Right.
And so it's interesting, right? That in certain situations, I'm like, oh my God, go for it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's so inspirational. And
Mm-hmm.
in other situations, maybe it's based on the way I'm feeling in that moment, or whether
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling depleted or particularly self-critical. But then there's other times where it might totally take me out, right? And
Right.
so again, just like knowing the differences between those two and
Right.
playing in that realm of just getting to know ourselves and our reactions to things like that.
Yeah, I can tell when I'm a little overstimulated, burned out, hangry, tired, when my tolerance level, I just can feel my tolerance level petering out. Where I'm just like, okay, I don't care anymore, or I don't want to hear that, I don't want to see it. I'm just like, kind of like shutting your window is what I feel like. If there was all the horns going on and people talking and there was all the noise, there comes a point where sometimes I'm just like, okay, I need to retreat right now because I just need some peace and I need to kind of get centered with myself. And I think we're not slowing down enough to do that, to just
Yeah.
be like, okay, I need a little bit of peace. And to give yourself permission to go back to your bedroom for 15 minutes and just
Yeah.
say, I need a break. I'm going to go lay down for 15 minutes, shut my eyes, listen to a meditation or go for a walk, whatever your strategies. And I think the different strategies, when I'm helping people, I think, well, try a bunch of different strategies and find out what works for you, because what works for me isn't going to work for you. And it
Yeah.
depends on the situation and the context, right? So like, or how you're feeling at the time, but finding out what works and getting some small wins and then deciding, oh, I notice if I put on upbeat music, my energy follows it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weirdly, emotion contagion, right? So like I can flip things if I wanted to, or I could just be like, nah, I'm going to nap it off. I need 30 minutes and I'll wake up and I'll be a new person. Or it might be burning off the crazy, I call it. That's when I have to go work out, ride a bike, hike up a mountain. And that's usually when I'm really pissed off.
Yeah.
That, yeah, just go burn off the crazy and let my fire just say all the things and just rant in my own head or to a friend.
Yeah.
And then I'm done. I come back and I'm a good person again. Like, burn off the crazy.
I love that. I love
Do
that.
you do that?
I usually sit in the crazy.
What works for you when you find yourself in these places?
Yeah, I like you need to retreat. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love that word, right? Because when we think about going on a retreat, it's all very beautiful and lovely. And I need to retreat, meaning pull back.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like the word retreat because it's a treat,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm going to treat myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to retreat myself for this time of kind of quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's solitude, stillness,
Mm-hmm.
quietness. That really helps me a lot. Sometimes I don't sometimes sitting in the sun really helps, even if it's for a couple of minutes.
Me too.
And I think this is important also to know when we're talking about workplace wellness, because we have to know what wellness means for us.
Mm-hmm.
We actually need to know when we feel well to be able then to cultivate tools for wellness. And
Mm-hmm.
you'd be surprised how many people don't even know what it feels like to feel well,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like some people are just they're so in it and their life demands that they're just in it, that when I'll say, like, when's the last time you felt really happy or really integrated? Or when's the last time you had a moment of awe? Or when's the last time you felt just like an overwhelming moment of gratitude? Angie, you would be shocked at how many people are like, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. I, sadly, I do know.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear it a lot too, and it breaks my heart. That's one of the reasons I want to take people out of their environments and put them in a retreat, because I think they need to change their environment, to change their mindset, to change their habits, to change their life. And so, it's just another tool, but it actually gives you enough time away, not an hour or a 2 hour lunch and learn or something. It takes you and the environment, and then you're surrounded with people. It gets you in a new state of mind, like a traveler's mindset, and just new possibilities open up, right? So sometimes workplaces will do those types of things, or they'll do an offsite retreat. Sometimes the employer will do it. Sometimes it's a personal thing where the person wants to go do those types of things. But how do you see how wellness, we talked about wellness being something that they need to define for themselves. And one of the things that I think people need to recognize too is that the dis-ease also causes disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
And chronic stress is not good for our overall, for optimal health.
Yeah. And people are in it. Like we don't even know we're stressed out. To your point about being able to recognize when we're depleted. We are handling so many things coming at us, and everyone is stretched more so than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed, like I can say for myself, say I'm in a particularly compressed time in my life. I remember a time where I went outside and I had a flat tire. Angie, you would have thought someone just ran over my dog. Like I literally dropped to my knees and was like, when is it going to end? My
Mm-hmm.
neighbors were like, it's just a flat tire, lady. Like,
Yeah.
pull it together. But it was just,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know that I had hit the wall,
Right.
right? Until something like that happened. And then I was like, oh no, I'm at the wall. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know. I didn't even know the wall was coming,
Right.
which is really, and so then those moments where something that we should be able to just kind of roll through it's taking us out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that now with loneliness and the disconnection, I think those things are coming more quickly and more often for many people. And so again, like watching kind of what is our reaction to this? The other day I had a flood. I caused a flood in my house, and I was on a call for an hour, and I had left on the sink. I left the sink. And so when I was gone,
I've
when I was
done that
over,
before.
oh my God, the entire house was like flooded. And I remember thinking, huh, well, this is going to take a minute. And I remember thinking, I'm so grateful I have a half hour to clean this up. Now, that is a person who is not stressed out, right?
Yeah.
But that's how we should like to be in the kind of in the flow of it. Like, okay, this sucks, but
Mm-hmm.
I have some time to clean this up. Aren't I lucky?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being like I was with the flat tire where I was brought to my knees.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so how do we make sure that we are fortifying ourselves so we're not in a constant state of depletion? And so how to identify what are the little things what are the little tools and tasks that I need to put in place, whether I think I need it or not, right? So making ourselves take a 5-minute mental break day during the work day,
Mm-hmm.
or between my clients going outside for 3 minutes instead of getting on the computer. I think I'm doing fine. Oh, I can look at my Instagram. I'm great today.
Mm-hmm.
But am I?
Right.
And shouldn't I put those things in place just in case I have a flat tire?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And if you're
So
solar powered like us, you need to get in the sun for 3 minutes and just like recharge.
recharge, right? And have our whole system kind of re-regulate, and we are all so dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us to identify what are a couple things I can do every day, just to make sure I'm taking care of my body,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of my central nervous system, so I don't have a Joelle freak out,
Yeah.
right?
So wait, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the vagus nerve and how somebody could use that to stimulate their vagus nerve and
Yeah.
calm themselves down.
I mean, there are, especially now with the internet, there are so many ways for us to calm. So our vagus nerve is the primary nerve that is responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. And I say that because freeze gets frozen out when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about the fight or flight. There's also freeze, and it's interesting how many more people freeze than actually fight or fly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it has gotten forgotten in the
Mm-hmm.
literature that there's this third way of reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is all our central nervous system going into protection mode.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that have a trauma history, it is not uncommon for them just to freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us to be aware of what our nervous system does in that moment, And so there are tons of breathing techniques we can do, ones that take no time at all. A
Mm-hmm.
4 breath. It's just sometimes it just is like a 4 breath count
Mm-hmm.
of a certain kind of breathing that immediately brings our vagus nerve down. Ground walking on the earth in bare feet on grass immediately brings our vagus nerve back to center. And if we can just kind of do those in preparation for how our central nervous system might get activated, because it's not just good in reaction.
Yeah.
Once we're already triggered, once we're already in flight, once we're already in fight, once we're already in freeze. Yes, it works for that, but it also it's proactive as well.
Preventative maintenance, right?
Preventative
Yeah.
maintenance, right? If
Yeah.
we can kind of have a breathing system that our body knows, and so our body is starting from a place of wholeness, then when those things happen, we have, like to your point, we have different options for reactivity.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be fight, flight, or freeze. It's going to be, I can do this.
Right. The pause. There's the
Pause.
pause in asking the question, and that space that we have to make different decisions and be conscious of what would best case scenario look like here, what's worst case scenario,
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
reacting, right?
Yeah. And sometimes going down the pattern of worst case scenario, I know it sounds really negative, but sometimes it actually, that's soothing for some people.
It helps
Because
me
if they're like,
sometimes.
yeah, the
Like,
worst case scenario is that I lose everything and I'm, homeless and eating cat food. I go, okay, is that the worst case scenario? Yep, that's the worst case scenario.
mm-hmm.
Okay, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then working back from there. Sometimes we have to touch it
Mm-hmm.
in order to re-regulate. We have to touch the worst case scenario.
So for speaking, that's a strategy I used because
Oh, you
I,
do?
doing more and more keynotes, and then I was fine speaking in front of students and small groups, but then, getting outside the comfort zone and speaking in front of more people, I started to recognize, okay, I have a fear of not being liked. I have a fear of not being good, like all of those types of things. So I just looked at my fear and was like, okay, let's do a little exposure therapy. Let's do more of it. And so it gets less scary. But also, worst case scenario, I suck and
Yeah,
they don't like me and they throw tomatoes at me,
right.
or I'm never invited back again. So that's kind of what I've done. And then I'm like, okay. And,
Okay.
I'm like, I've actually dealt with harder things in my life than that. That's what that's what I can tap into and sometimes I think that people who've been through a lot of trauma don't tap into what they actually have, what
Yeah.
skills they have, and what resilience they have. So I've used my things that I've done that are much harder than that to anchor myself back to worst case scenario, this, and it's still not that bad.
Yeah, right. And you can handle it.
I can
You're
handle
gonna be
that.
okay.
I
Yeah.
I could handle tripping on the stage. I'd
Yeah.
probably get up and be like, ta-da, you
Right,
know.
exactly. And it would break the tension, actually. That's the thing, is it would actually break your tension, right? Because you couldn't worry about them throwing tomatoes at you if you're falling down.
But if people would go through these exercises in their head, I think, because when we just get in fear mode, we just like, I don't want to do that. I don't do that. I'm not a person who speaks. I'm not a public speaker. We just start labeling ourselves or saying what we don't do. And that's not actually the truth.
Yeah.
That's just a belief. And we could experiment and find out, but what else? And what else could you do? Or what would worst case scenario be? You get divorced. Okay, so like there's a bad relationship. Your kids hate you. Like let's walk down that path for a
Through
minute.
it.
Let's walk
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah. And I always ask people, like, and what's the evidence? When someone's like, oh, I'm a horrible public speaker. Tell me some data on that. Well, I've never done it. I go, okay. Okay. So you have zero evidence. So you have this negative belief that has zero evidence that's keeping you from doing something that you may or may not even like, but it is paralyzing you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be real clear that this is what's happening. And so, yeah, go and speak. And maybe you hate it, and then you don't have to be afraid of it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But at least get some evidence, at
Yes.
least gather some data.
Yeah. I love that. That is so good. So many good little gems in here. That's awesome. So how would let's say somebody's working in an environment that, they feel like they kind of mediocre, workplace wellness. How would
Mm,
you suggest they bring it up to like a supervisor that, I think there's some room for improvement around here. Right? What
yeah.
would those options look like from the psychotherapy
Yeah.
perspective?
I mean, I would love to empower individuals to look in their life and identify things that have been really helpful for them, and then go to whoever they go to and say, um, I want to lift morale. I want to inspire people to increase productivity. I mean, you have to kind of talk the language of whatever the organization is
Mm-hmm.
for a really open and enlightened organization. The language can be a little bit looser and a little bit more kind of relational.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of organizations that still don't do, what did I call it, woo woo in the workplace,
Yeah.
um, the language is going to have to be a little bit different. You're going to have to speak to what is important to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? What the incentive is for them to do that. And so you might have to use words like morale, productivity,
Engagement.
workplace,
Yeah.
yeah, engage, those kind of words. So depending on what the language is, for people to go and say, I want to offer something. I want to offer once a month, I want to offer a 12-minute meditation at lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do it anyway. So I want to use the conference room, and I'm going to do it anyway. And people can come or they can't come. I want to offer a 10-minute dance party once a month where people come and we just dance for 10 minutes. I want to do a potluck. I want to, at the beginning of the month, I would like to lead the team in a 10-minute, what is our intention? What are our personal and professional intentions for this month, where we just go around the table. And so I want people to feel empowered to go and say, I want to try this,
Mm-hmm.
and know that there are so many things out there that they might try it and it might fail, and they get to just try something different.
Mm-hmm.
But try to tap into something that's really important for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's amazing, to your point about music, like even playing music during lunch that's uplifting, where people might be in their cubicles, might be at their house, at their desks on Zoom, eating separately, but they're having a shared experience of listening to music.
Mm-hmm.
And that shared experience, collective effervescence,
Effervescence. Yes.
that shared experience is enough
Mm-hmm.
lift their spirits, and could quite and possibly lead them through the rest of their workday, right?
Absolutely. I want to lead an all walk at my work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, right? Like, just think about all the things that people have talents and gifts for that they don't even have to have their employer hire it out or bring some guru. There's
Exactly.
so many people inside your organization. It might not be a fix all, but it's everybody being part of the solution and and finding different ways to connect. Connection before content. We've got to find ways to actually connect before we're always just putting more work out there, more noise, more distraction. Um, 10-minute, 5-minute ways to connect.
Yeah, it takes no time at all. An appreciation box,
Yeah.
or when someone was really outstanding. And sometimes it could be the person who cleaned out the refrigerator, or it could be the person who answered the email that I couldn't get to. Just a little bit of like an appreciation box or a shout out,
Mm-hmm.
that during a meeting, for the first 3 minutes, someone gets to say, "Hey, before we start, can I just have a shout out for Angie? Last week I had to take a couple days off for personal reasons, and she really stepped up and did and cleared out my inbox and answered a bunch of phone calls that I knew I didn't have the capacity to do. So I want to shout out."
That's
Right?
awesome.
That's it. Because again, I get the feeling of giving you a shout out, you get the feeling of receiving it, and everybody gets the feeling of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's this collateral experience that we can have when we are watching two people connect, even if it's in a boardroom.
Yeah.
So I just really encourage anybody to tap into whatever really fuels them.
Mm-hmm.
I like acknowledgement, and I like appreciation.
Mm.
I like gratitude. So that really drives me. So
Yeah.
I really like to put that into place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes it gets a little bit tricky because sometimes people's feelings get hurt if they don't have a lot of shout outs. So sometimes what I do is, if I'm sitting around with a team, I'll have, you turn to the person to your left and say, hey, I've noticed this about you, or I appreciate this about you. And it gets really interesting when perhaps the person to your left is someone that you've had conflict with.
Oh, yeah. Right.
You can always find
You
something,
can.
always. And so that's when it's always really, it's actually kind of juicy because you turn to the person to the left who you just had a huge argument with
Mhm.
on Zoom, and you have to turn to them and say, I notice that you're here every day and that you always have a smile on your face, and I
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. I love that. You can learn from anybody, and even your anti-heroes for sure. There's lessons in that, and they're teachers. They're
Yeah.
some of your best teachers.
Yep.
I love that. So you used one of my favorite words, collective effervescence. I think it's fun to say,
Yeah.
and it's part of awe. So do you want to talk about what that is?
Yeah. So collective effervescence is when a group of people, and it doesn't have to be a large group, when a group of people come together and have a shared experience, external experience. So the biggest example would be like at a music at a concert or a festival, um, sporting events.
Mhm.
Dr. Keltner, who's a foremost researcher on awe, likes to talk about as much as sporting events and sports get kind of a bad rap because people get all kind of fired up, and
Mhm.
there's certain fans that are a little bit more fired up than
Mhm.
others. He said there is something to be said when everyone's in that stadium and people are dressed in their colors and they're high-fiving, and there is something to be said about that energy.
Mhm.
It is undeniable,
Mhm.
right? It's undeniable. And so when you're at a concert and everyone's dancing or moving, or at a festival, and there's just this collective experience, positive experience, it is a moment of awe.
Absolutely. And that's one of the ways that people can bring more joy to their workplace as well, and
Yeah.
wellness. Find ways that you are experiencing awe in moral beauty, in collective effervescence. Moral beauty, that is just being able to notice that you see the humanity in somebody and how they cared for somebody on your team, or how they stepped up for you, or just noticing those
Yeah.
types of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Last night I was at a child's lacrosse game, and they have their goalie is very, very good. And so the secondary goalie never gets to play. I mean, we're at like our 12th game, and he never gets to play. And he's a I know this kid personally, so of course I cried when this happened.
mhm.
But so they were winning. And so the last 3 minutes of the game, the coach puts this goalie in, first time this season that he's
Mm.
played. And he saved 3 goals, right?
Oh.
After the game, I'm getting choked up just talking about it. After the game, the entire team just like ran up to him and they just like huddled around
Uh,
him. Now, they were winning like 12-3. There was no way he was going to lose that game for them, but it didn't
it didn't.
matter.
Yeah.
He got to experience success. It didn't matter what the circumstances were. He got to experience success, and he got to experience collective effervescence from his team.
That
And
is
it was
incredible.
like everybody in the stands was crying, like
Mm-hmm.
it was, and it wasn't, I don't know, there was like 25 people in the stands. It doesn't take a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we were all so touched by this moment. And that was both collective effervescence and moral beauty, because we as the parents were touched
Mm-hmm.
that this team rallied around this kid who was desperate to play and never got to play. And not only did he play, but he nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was both collective effervescence and moral beauty. It brought the place down.
Yeah.
Like just talking about it now, as you can see, I'm getting choked up, right?
So you can bring yourself back to that emotional experience. Isn't that incredible?
Incredible. Like, yeah.
And that's the work that I think we need to start working, is like, what did I feel like when I was in that moment, or when I'm on this awe walk, or when I'm in my happy place? How do I bring myself back there, even though my brain, even though I'm not there, I can tell my brain I'm there. This is how I want to feel right now.
Yeah, if we experience, we can live it at any time. And it's really interesting because I can ask one of my clients or a friend, tell me the last time you felt really depressed. Tell me the last time you felt a moment of rejection. Tell me the last the last time you felt shamed. And sometimes they can tell me something from 30 years ago, but I tell them, when's the last time you felt a moment of awe? They can't remember it. So as quickly as we can bring up feelings of loss, rejection, sadness, shame, embarrassment, those are living in us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're reliving that all the time. Just as much as we can do that, we can relive this moment of moral beauty, of collective effervescence, of the awe we find in nature.
Yeah.
Like we can access those just as easily. We just don't do it.
And we
Right.
need to know that it's a skill that we can continue to enhance and work like a muscle.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. So, awe in the workplace. We're going to have to,
Awe
awe in the workplace.
Aw.
So, I really appreciate your time in talking about workplace well-being. I think it might be something that we continue to go down that path because, we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. And so that means part of their health and wellness is their spiritual being, how they feel in that environment, what support they have, all of those kinds of things. And even having the knowledge and tools to enhance the skills to do the job better, right?
Yep,
And
absolutely.
the more we can give people the tools and frameworks they need, they're going to be more successful in their jobs. They're going to be better in their homes, and they're going to be better in their societies and their communities. And our world's in a hurting place right now, but there's a lot of light out there that is really wanting to be in the trenches with people when they're ready to make a change.
Yeah. And we all have light in us, and we can all access it, and we can bring it to any situation. And so if anyone's feeling called to just really tap into bringing light into their workplace, I want to really encourage them to do that.
Absolutely. Be the light and shine
Right.
shine your ass off.
Yes, yes, please. We need you.
We
This is a call for all the light workers to come out.
Yes, and
We
shine.
need you.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. It means so much to me that that you'll be on the podcast, that you share your wisdom, and that it means a lot to me that I just the friend this soulful friend that I've gained this year. It's a pleasure. I'm grateful. Super
It is
grateful.
a true pleasure in every way.